Pavagyalbrandhasya Jnananjanasalakaya Chakshuramilatam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanyamabhishtam Stapdam Mena Bhutale Swayam Rupagadamaham Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sarganagaragunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijanasahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sarganalidya Shri Vishaka Anvitamsya Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namni Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Destarni Vanchakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patidanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati Gopi Sugupika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanute Devi Vradamami Hari Priya Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Reading from Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta. Volume 2, Chapter 43. Can you please let me know if you can hear me well?
Yes, Prabhuji, we can hear you and see the screen also.
Yes, Prabhuji.
You talk, Sadish Papa, I can't hear you.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, can you hear me now, Prabhuji?
No?
Yes, Prabhuji, now I can hear you.
Okay. Reading from Śrīla Prabhupāda-līlāmṛta, Volume 2, Chapter 43. Beginning the Temple of Krishna Balaram. April 1972. Śrīla Prabhupada was meditating on the constructing his Krishna Balaram Mandir. In April of 1972, he asked his disciple Surabhi, who had drawn the plans for the Bombay Center, to execute drawings basing the design on Indian Renaissance architecture. Prabhupada liked the Govinda Ji's temple, located near the original Govinda Ji temple constructed by Rupa Goswami. He liked its open courtyard surrounded by many arches and its front steps leading up to the deity darshan area. He suggested that some features of the temple be incorporated into his temple. Surabhi, with the assistance of a Vrindavan architect, executed the plans and Prabhupada approved. This will be the grandest temple in Vrindavan. Many high-class gentlemen in Delhi who are also devotees will relish the chance to live with us on weekends, and it will be for them just like Vaikuntha. You must construct something wonderful, otherwise it will be a discredit to you American boys. That will absolve the position of America and India. And this Vrindavan project is one of the most important of ours in ISKCON. Although Gurudas had been careful to keep in touch with Prabhupada by mail, he had neglected certain important matters in Vrindavan, such as digging a well and getting city approval, things Prabhupada had repeatedly asked for. In the summer of 1972, Prabhupada wrote, "From the beginning, I said I simply wanted a temple built in Vrindavan just like Govindaji's temple. And there have been so many letters, but that has not been done. Never mind, now I like that plan of Surabhi's." 2 weeks later, Prabhupada again wrote Gurudas on the same point. "I wanted a temple like Govindaji. Is it so difficult that for the last 6 months you have consulted so many engineers? Any ordinary engineer could draw up the papers and get it passed. There has been so much unnecessary correspondence. To build a temple in Vrindavan should not be so difficult," Prabhupada thought, and he became impatient with the delays. Concerned that the devotees and architects not make the buildings too costly, He said that they should go ahead with the plans he had approved, even if the building were to be a little cheaper than in the original plan. He was concerned that a competent disciple oversee the work so that ISKCON didn't get cheated. As early as April of 1972, Prabhupada had asked that the deities in Vrindavan be Krishna and Balaram. Krishna may be black, Balaram of white, and the pose in the back of the Back to Godhead magazine is very nice. He asked that a sign be put out front announcing Sri Krishna Balaram Mandir. One reason Prabhupada chose Krishna and Balaram as the preceding deities was that most of the Vrindavan temples were of Radha and Krishna. ISKCON's temple would be unique in Vrindavan. Another reason was that the ISKCON land was located in Raman Reti, an area of forest and soft sands where Krishna and Balaram had enjoyed their childhood pastimes 5,000 years ago. To celebrate and worship the youthful sports of Krishna and Balaram in Raman Reti was fitting. Although thousands of years had passed since Krishna advent in Vrindavan, the same atmosphere and many of the same sights and sounds still prevailed. Peacocks ran across the sand or sat on the rooftop or in trees. The cooing and chirpings of pigeons and cuckoos and the sweep of parrots' green wings were eternal sounds and sights of the Vrindavan forest. In Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Prabhupada had described how Krishna and Balaram and their cowherd friends played in Raman Reti and similar places. My dear friends, just see how this river bank is extremely beautiful because of its pleasing atmosphere. And just see how the blooming lotuses are attracting bees and birds by their aroma. The humming and chirping of the bees in the forest is echoing throughout the beautiful trees in the forest. Also, here the sands are clean and soft. Therefore, this must be considered the best place for our sporting and pastimes. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, the playing of the cowherd boys with Krishna and Balram as friends in Vrindavan is the highest spiritual realization, far beyond the ordinary religious understanding of God. The supreme truth, whom some meditate upon as impersonal Brahman, others worshipped as the Supreme Almighty, and still others considered an ordinary living entity, was the eternal loving friend of the cowherd boys of Vrindavan. Only after many, many lifetimes of pious activities had they become eligible to join in the loving pastimes of Krishna and Balaram in Ramanareti. In establishing a temple of Krishna and Balaram, Prabhupada wanted to offer the peaceful transcendental atmosphere of Ramanareti to all people, including visitors from abroad, commuters from Delhi, and his own disciples. Already he had received a letter from a major international travel agency requesting that he provide accommodation for tourists so that the ISKCON guest house could be included in official tours of spiritual India. People were always coming in India to tour the holy places. Unfortunately, most of the places were unauthorized or overrun by cheaters. ISKCON's center, therefore, would be very important, Prabhupada wrote. Have a European preaching center and try to enlist all the tourists and hippies who come to Vrindavan. Give them nice prasadam and engage them in chanting, cleaning the temple, and reading our books. Give them all facilities for becoming devotees. There was another particular significance in Prabhupada's choosing Krishna and Balaram as a central object of worship in Vrindavan temple. Lord Balaram is the first expansion from Lord Krishna, and in his incarnation of Sankarshana, he upholds all the universes. The Vaishnavas, therefore, worship Balaram for spiritual strength. You can pray to Lord Balaram, Prabhupada said, to help you in your deficiencies. As a source of spiritual strength, and Lord Balaram is also known as the original spiritual master. As in Prabhupada's other large ISKCON temples, there would be 3 altars, and beside Krishna and Balaram would stand the deity of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself and Lord Nityananda is Lord Balaram, a fact that Krishna Balaram Mandir would proclaim to the world. Lord Nityananda is especially referred to as the Kripa Avatar, the form of the Lord of God, most merciful to the fallen conditioned souls. Thus, the worship of Krishna Balaram as Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda would emphasize distributing Krishna consciousness to others. Prabhupada also wanted to install deities of Radha Shyamsundar along with their 2 attendant Gopis Lalita and Vishaka. Srila Prabhupada could not possibly stay full time in Vrindavan, and yet whenever he was away, progress slowed. Gurudas, the temple president, had little money and little expertise in managing finances. Prabhupada called him Dumb Cheap Babu, a name given by Indians to Westerners who think they have won a damn cheap bargain, although they are actually being cheated. Since Prabhupada did not trust his devotees' spending habit, he arranged for a complicated system whereby he would have to approve all ISKCON Vrindavan checks even while traveling. When Gurudas wanted to spend Tejas, the Delhi temple president would come to Vrindavan and approve the expenses. Then a check would be made out and mailed to Srila Prabhupada for his signature. When the check returned to Delhi, Tejas would add his own signature and give the check to Gurudas. Although Prabhupada generally preferred not to burden himself with managing his temples, he insisted on supervising all spending in Vrindavan, down to the last rupee. But even with such controls, Gurudas would misspend money, taking funds earmarked for construction and using them for other temple purposes, usually getting cheated by the merchants. After Prabhupada's 1972 visit during Kartik, he was away from Vrindavan for an entire year, directing things through correspondence. With the Krishna consciousness movement growing quite quickly on all continents, he had many places to visit. Still, his three main projects, Bombay, Vrindavan, and Mayapur, were his major subjects of correspondence and his greatest financial investments. One reason he did not come more often to Vrindavan was that Gurudas' letter had been very optimistic, promising a temple opening by Janmashtami in 1973. Surabhi was in charge of the construction and knew well that the work was going too slowly. Yet Gurudas would write to Prabhupada painting a picture of imminent completion of construction and opening of the mandir. Prabhupada was enlivened to hear the good news and he held Gurudas to his promise, though with reservations. If you can finish the work by Janmashtami next, that would be a very great credit for you. I shall come from any part of the world just to install the deity. But now you must work very, very hard to make good your promise to me. Otherwise, I shall be very disappointed and become very, very angry upon you. Prabhupada warned the devotees in Vrindavan that they would have to work diligently, finishing before the monsoon season arrived in June, if they were actually to fulfill their promise. But anyone visiting the construction site in Vrindavan could understand that the building would never be finished in time. The temple area consisted of foundation lines and steel rods. Only 3 or 4 devotees were living there, struggling to organize laborers and to obtain funds and building materials. That summer was extremely hot, and each day the devotees were forced to spend the afternoon lying down in their huts, exhausted from the heat. Prices for cement and steel had doubled. Yet Prabhupada continued to respond to Guruda's glowing reports, encouraging him to continue with determination. But Prabhupada could also read between the lines and he cautioned Gurudas, I simply want to see that the work is being carried on vigorously and the money shall not be used to pay bad bills. The money should simply be used for construction. Talk of a temple opening by Janmashtami gradually disappeared, but Prabhupada did not express his disappointment. Rather, he continued to encourage and push the devotees onward, asking that at least his own room be completed so that when he visited in October of 1973, he would have a place to stay. When Prabhupada arrived, however, his quarters were far from completion and he had to live for a week in the home of a Vrindavan friend. He did not remove Gurudas, but he tried to teach him better management and accounting. He also wrote to his India GBC Secretary Tamal Krishna Goswami to get more funds for Vrindavan project. So I have arrived here in Vrindavan, but so far the project is concerned. Why the money is so irregular? TGS reports that in the past 3 months you have sent rupees 5,000 and since then nothing. How will the project go on? Inspired by Prabhupada's presence, the devotee rallied. They held a little festival on the land, erecting a tent and decorating a foundation post with banana trees and flowers. For several evenings, Prabhupada lectured before a crowd of about 50 local people sitting on folding chairs in between the foundation lines. Prabhupada was determined in his desire. He wanted a temple as much as ever, and a small band of disciples in Vrindavan were convinced of their mission to erect the temple. They knew they were building a temple not merely as their own local project but as something very important for the whole world. Prabhupada said the next Janmashtami, August 1974, as the new grand opening. Surabhi had considerable architectural and construction experience, but he had never worked with such an ornate building before. He doubted, therefore, whether they could finish in a year's time. Tejas wondered whether they could raise the funds in time. Gurudas was becoming more competent and he assured Prabhupada that they would meet their deadline. Subala had wanted to stay in Vrindavan but only on the condition that he be relieved of management, free to chant and wander in the groves. But he had long since departed for the west. Those devotees who remained committed to Vrindavan knew that, at least for the present, the real spiritual path in Vrindavan was one of the hard labor, anxiety, combating the elements, and working as pure instruments in the service of Krishna's pure devotee. In February 1974, as Prabhupada was traveling eastward from Los Angeles, he wrote Gurudas that he would like to come to Vrindavan as soon as his residential rooms were completed, and he asked when that would be. Gurudas consulted Surabhi, who said 1 month. Trying to be more positive, Gurudas invited Prabhupada to come and move into his new quarters in 3 weeks, but Śrīla Prabhupada telegrammed back that he would be coming in 2. At that time, Prabhupada's house had no roof or floor and only portion of outer walls. Surabhi began a marathon construction effort and hired 2 work crews, one for the day and one for the night. 2 weeks non-stop, they worked drastically, cutting corners. They plastered and painted simultaneously, and as a result, the wall remained wet. A few days before Prabhupada's arrival, they put down a temporary floor, bricks covered with cow dung, covered with rugs, covered with sheets. The weather was cold and the house had no heating. In the morning, Prabhupada arrived. The devotees all gathered with him as he sat happily before his desk, praising their achievement. He said if they could keep working like this, they could finish everything before Janmashtami. Almost immediately upon his arrival, Prabhupada began to manifest the symptoms of a cold, but he would not hear of moving to another place. This is my first house, he said. Now I am going to stay here. The large brick and stone room was simple and austere and remained dark during most of the day, but Prabhupada considered it his Vrindavan residence. Soon local distinguished visitors began calling on him and he received them warmly, discussing Krishna consciousness hour after hour in this room. In the evenings, he would lecture there and hold a kirtan. Prabhupada had a problem to face in Vrindavan. Gurudas had informed him that Mr. S wanted to take back 50 feet of donated land, claiming the construction was not going quickly enough and that he had never intended to give the front portion. He was thinking of using it for shops, maybe even a petrol pump. Prabhupada was alarmed, for Mr. S to take back the front part of the property would ruin the temple scheme and make a farce of the gift. What good was land without proper access to it? In further inquiry, Prabhupada learned that Gurudas had not yet received the actual deed. Prabhupada was greatly disturbed, yet he proceeded calmly and intently. Gurudas, he said, should immediately secure the deed from the registrar and construct a high brick wall around the property. Prabhupada's secretary wired Mr. N, who was away from Vrindavan. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada now in Vrindavan until 13th. Now settled upfront peace as promised. Mr. N voiced his reply. Front part of the land will be used for other purposes as decided earlier. Letter follows. Suddenly, it seemed that Prabhupada had another Bombay case on his hands. Mr. S. action, however, confirmed Prabhupada's urgency for completing the construction. Had the land been already walled and the temple built, there would have been no question of Mrs. S. taking the land back. Prabhupada's followers could now see clearly his reason for pushing them. He had been vigilant, even heavy and critical, but for good reasons. Maya's opposition to Krishna consciousness was always present, so that if the devotees let up for even a moment, they could suffer great losses. The question, why hurry? Why be so anxious to build a temple right away? Should never have been asked. It was the question of the knave, the lazy. As soon as the Krishna consciousness movement had no temple in Vrindavan, the threat would exist that there might never be a temple. Prabhupada wrote to a friend in Calcutta. This statement of K has given me much concern. He said personally to me that under the dictation of Srimati Radharani, he has given the land to us in charity. We have invested already lakhs of rupees for constructing a temple, and now if he uses the front portion of other purpose for other purposes, there will be great damage to the view of the temple. Kindly see Mr. N.S., brother of K, and settle this up so we can go on in our progressive construction work. Kindly treat this as very urgent. In Mr. S. absence from Vrindavan, Prabhupada took the opportunity to speak with Mr. S. brother as well as Mr. S. lawyers. What had been given in the name of Srimati Radharani, he informed them, could not be taken back. Mr. S. associate agreed, at least for the moment, that Mr. S. had no substantial position. Meanwhile, the laborers were working quickly to build a 12-foot wall around the property. It was 4 a.m. Prabhupada sat in the cold darkness with a small desk lamp shining before him. Having risen from bed at 2 and come into his main room to dictate Srimad Bhagavatam purports, he now sat silently. Meanwhile, the laborers were working quickly to build a 12-foot high wall around the property. It was 4 a.m. Prabhupada sat in the cold darkness with a small desk lamp shining before him. Having risen from bed at 2 and come into his main room to dictate Srimad Bhagavatam purports, he now sat silently. He wore a woolen knit hat pulled over his ears, a sweater, and a grey wool chadar around his shoulders. On the other side of the double doors sat his servant, peeking in to see what his spiritual master was doing. On Prabhupada's last visit to the United States, he has acquired a new secretary servant, Satsvarupa Das Goswami. Despite the cold, Prabhupada's new assistant was happy to be in Vrindavan and so intimately situated close to his spiritual master. Prabhupada rang his bell, the servant jumped up, opened the double doors, and entered the room. In the far corner of the large room, seated at the desk, he saw Prabhupada, looking grave and mystical, his beautifully intense eyes sparkling. As Satsvarupa offered obeisances, he thought of his great fortune in being there with his spiritual master. When he sat up, he saw Prabhupada nod slightly and he felt that Prabhupada was acknowledging his servant's good fortune. Sitting on the floor on the other side of the desk, Satsvarupa faced Srila Prabhupada. In awe and reverence, he tensed, prepared to do whatever Prabhupada requested, yet fearful that the request might be something he wouldn't know how to do. Get the Krishna book, volume 2, Prabhupada said. His servant ran and got it from the shelf, returned and again sat down. Read the story of King Riga, Prabhupada said. Though Prabhupada's comments were complete, his servant paused, wondering if there was anything else. He opened the book, then hesitated. Out loud, he asked. Prabhupada nodded and his servant began to read aloud. Soon, however, Satsvarupa became puzzled as to why Prabhupada was having him to do this so early in the morning when he was usually dictating Srimad Bhagavatam. As Satsvarupa read aloud, Prabhupada sat motionless, giving no indication that he was pleased or even listening. In that silence, Satsvarupa became very aware of his own voice reading and he listened intently to the story. King Riga, the story explained, gave many cows in charity to the Brahmanas. One day, however, one cow wandered back and entered among King Riga's herd, and so the king unknowingly gave it in charity to another Brahmana. But as the new owner was leading the cow away, the former owner returned to claim it. An argument ensued between the two Brahmanas. Coming before King Riga, they charged that he had taken back a cow previously given in charity. A great sin. The puzzled King Riga very humbly offered each Brahmana 100,000 cows in exchange for this one cow. Neither accepted, however, since according to Manu's law, a Brahmana's property can't be taken under any condition, even by the government. Consequently, both Brahmanas left in anger, and as a result, King Riga had to take his next birth as a lizard. As Prabhupada's servant read on, he suddenly got the feeling that Prabhupada had asked him to read the story to expose the cheating of his own servant. In a panic, he tried to think of how he had committed the offense of stealing from his spiritual master. He couldn't think of anything wrong until he recalled having taken a pair of socks which had been given to Prabhupada as a gift. Prabhupada was always receiving gifts wherever he went, and it was his practice after collecting socks and scarves and so on to give them to his disciples. Prabhupada would use only a fraction of things given to him. So because it was cold in Vrindavan, Satsvarupa, who had no socks, had taken one inexpensive looking pair that he was sure his spiritual master would never want to use. He had assumed that Prabhupada would not object, but now his cheating was indirectly exposed. After the story was completed, Prabhupada remained silent, as did his servant. Perhaps Prabhupada is sleeping. Satsvarup thought, though he dared not to say anything or even move. They both sat motionless, Satsvarup looking down at the book and sometimes up at Prabhupada, waiting for an indication. 5 minutes passed. Finally, Prabhupada said, now take this chapter and type it up. His servant acknowledged the instruction and got up to leave, but still it wasn't clear. Why had he read the story and why type it? Prabhupada then spoke again. Now I want to dictate one letter. Satsvarupa had a notepad with him and he sat down and immediately began writing Prabhupada's words. The letter was to Mr. S. and Prabhupada referred to Mr. S.'s donation of the land and to his desire to take back the front 50 feet. He reminded Mr. S. that according to original agreement, he had given the entire land with sanction of Srimati Radharani. How could he say that now he was taking it back? Mr. S should please reconsider what he was proposing. In this connection, Prabhupada was enclosing the story from Srimad Bhagavatam of King Nriga. Mr. S should read it and consider the implications. Prabhupada's servant felt relieved, but he also felt that his guilt was valid and that he should be wary of becoming too familiar with his spiritual master's possessions. And he had learned another lesson as well. His own viewpoint of Prabhupada was entirely subjective. Although he had been with Prabhupada, he had not correctly understood Prabhupada's thoughts and motives. He felt that perhaps he was not the only disciple who sometimes made that mistake. One may try to comprehend the many aspects of Srila Prabhupada, but one should not expect to understand completely. Even GBC secretaries and other leading devotees who were right with Prabhupada in his dealings could not know what Prabhupada was thinking. But Swarupa Maharaj decided that it was best to always follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And going back to the adjoining room, he began typing the story of King Nriga. At sunrise, Prabhupada stepped out of his house onto the dusty lane and the devotees of ISKCON Vrindavan joined him on his morning walk. As he walked, he began saying that one of the devotees had complained that the electricity was always going off. The devotees had said that India was advanced in spiritual knowledge and the West in material knowledge and that the two should combine. Prabhupada agreed. Yes, he said, that is my mission to combine them. Prabhupada reached the Chetikara road in front of the property and began walking down the middle of the road in the direction of Delhi. Large neem trees lined the road. The metal side of the life is also necessary, Prabhupada continued. In the West, even for shaving, they have a machine. This is very good, but it is also being misused. It is all for the itching sensation, sex, which is insignificant and abominable. The whole intelligence is being employed like the dogs or cats. Prabhupada paused and a devotee asked, Prabhupada, how can we understand that Vrindavan is Krishna's abode? There seems to be such contamination in Vrindavan. This is because your senses are impure, said Prabhupada. But when your eyes are smeared with the salve of love, then you can see Vrindavan. Don't judge Vrindavan by this external manifestation. As Prabhupada walked along the road, many persons greeted him and his disciples called Jai Radhe, Hare Krishna. Some even stepped out of their shoes and prostrated themselves before Prabhupada, who returned their respects with folded palms, nodding his head and saying Hare Krishna. The tightly gathered group, walking in the cold morning air past fields, ashrams, and groves. They heard the singing of many varieties of birds, sparrows, parrots, cuckoos, pigeons, and peacocks. Sugarcane stood high and ready for harvest. As Prabhupada walked farther, the large neem trees gave way to small, thorny acacia trees, and herds of cows and buffaloes grazed in the fields. For half an hour, Prabhupada continued, then turning, he retraced his route. On the roadside, he passed a man dressed in the simple white dhoti of a Babaji, warming himself before a fire of twigs. Prabhupada said that the Sat Goswami Ashtakam by Srinivasa Acharya defines the actual qualities of person in the renounced order. The song glorifies the six Goswamis who gave up their posts as government ministers and became mendicants, accepting only one cloth and thinking always of Krishna and the gopis. Vrindavan is the gift of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, Prabhupada said. They wrote many books so poor people could take advantage and become Krishna conscious. We see many imitations of Rupa Goswami in Vrindavan today, but they should never take the dress of Rupa Goswami, especially if they cannot give up this cigarette smoking habit. It was the gift of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati that we should not jump and try to change our garb all of a sudden. We should try to hear of the absolute truth from realized souls. Prabhupada said that especially his disciples living in Vrindavan should become Goswamis. Whether grihasthas or sannyasis, they should live simply and austerely and engage 24 hours in the service of Krishna. Prabhupada sat in his room talking with Gunarnava about finances. Where are the bills? Prabhupada asked. I am keeping duplicates, Prabhupada. Gunarnava explained, showing him how he had attached the bills to the vouchers. Tejas is keeping the originals in Delhi. This is just an explanation, Prabhupada replied. I am an auditor. I am not A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Don't you understand? The auditor wants to see the bills, not just your excuses. Throughout the day, Prabhupada would call in Gurudas, Surabhi, and Mr. Lahadi, the engineer, even the contractor, Mr. Ali Box. Although the contractor was Muhammad, then Prabhupada requested him, please do a nice job, because this is Krishna's temple. If you work very nicely, Krishna will bless you. Prabhupada assured him that money would not be a problem. He would arrange that $10,000 a month would come from his temples in America until the construction was finished. It will be finished by Janmashtami? Prabhupada asked. Yes, Gurudas said firmly. It will be done. Mayapur, March 1974. While traveling from Calcutta to Mayapur, Prabhupada stopped as usual at a pleasant, secluded mango grove and sitting on a straw mat, took a breakfast of fresh fruits. A group of his disciples and his sister Bhavatarini were also present, and Prabhupada saw that everyone received prasadam. He then returned to his car and the caravan continued to Mayapur. As Prabhupada's car approached the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir, he was met by a roadblock of ISKCON devotees waiting at the spot known as Srivasangan, over 2 miles from ISKCON property. 400 devotees from America, England, Europe, South America, Australia, India, and other parts of the world sang Hare Krishna, following Prabhupada as he rode slowly towards the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir. Prabhupada smiled. Looking out from the back seat of the car, he recognized many faithful disciples, all hankering for his merciful dance of recognition. The car, surrounded tightly by devotees, inched its way through the gates and up the long drive to the temple. Along the roadside and around the temple buildings, colorful marigolds and tagar were bloom, enhancing Srila Prabhupada's joyous reception. The temple room was completed, its sparkling marble floor, freshly painted walls, and crystal chandeliers, all having been readied just a few days before. After offering obeisances before the resplendent golden forms of Radha Madhava on the altar, Prabhupada turned and walked the long temple hall to sit on his Vyasasana and address this first truly international gathering of disciples. He welcomed them to Mayapur, acknowledging that on this day Bhakti Vinod Thakur prediction had come true. The devotees shouted triumphantly, Jai Jai Srila Prabhupada. Bhakti Vinod Thakur had written, Oh, for that day when the fortunate English, French, Russian, German, and American people will take up banners, mridangas, and kartals and raise kirtan through their streets and towns. When will that day come? Bhakti Vinod Thakur's prophecy had come to pass. He had also predicted, soon a great saint will come and establish Lord Chaitanya's movement throughout the world. That great personality, empowered to create devotees of all races and backgrounds and to rally them together in Mayapur, thousands of miles from their homes, was Srila Prabhupada. And although he saw himself as an instrument of the Acharyas, his disciples saw him as the personification of Lord Chaitanya's and Lord Nityananda's mercy. As stated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Yadyapi Amara Guru Chaitanyera Das Tathapi Janeye Ami Tanhara Prakash. Although I know that my spiritual master is a servitor of Shri Chaitanya, I know him also as a plenary manifestation of the Lord. Leaving the temple room, Prabhupada went upstairs and retired to his room, satisfied that the building was now fulfilling its purpose by giving shelter to hundreds of his spiritual children. He began greeting leading disciples from various parts of the world, hearing the encouraging news of book distribution and dealing with problems. He asked that everyone take advantage of the holy dham by maintaining kirtan in the temple room around the clock, stopping only for scheduled classes on Srimad Bhagavatam. The devotees were very happy to be together in the dham. Those with expressed experience of India, like Jayapataka Swami and Achyutananda Swami, led groups of devotees on parikram pilgrims to local holy places. This visit to Mayapur would constitute the first half of the devotees' Indian pilgrimage. After 10 days, they were scheduled to go to Vrindavan. Almost all of the devotees assembled in Mayapur preached in areas of the world where the mode of ignorance and passion predominated. Daily they had to mix with materialistic people, and it was inevitable that they would become worn down. This pilgrimage, therefore, was a chance for purification. Although they were not advanced in birth or in knowledge of Sanskrit Vedas, Prabhupada had accepted them, and that was their certification as devotees. They were bona fide candidates for understanding the meaning of Dharma. They would become refreshed by bathing in the Ganges in Mayapur and Yamuna in Vrindavan, and they would return to their respective centers throughout the world purified and renowned for more active preaching. One song by Narottam Das Thakur described the pilgrims' eligibility to realize Dham. Gaurangera Sangi Gane Nitya Siddha Gare Mane Seyaye Vrajendra Sutapasha Sri Gauda Mandala Bhumi Yeba Jane Chintamani Tara Haya Vraja Bhume Vasa. Those whose intelligence has come to understand that the eternal associates of Vrindavan Dham are not different from those in Navadvip can attain the service of the son of Nanda Maharaj Krishna. Such fortunate persons perceive the holy Dham as an object of service because their transcendental eyes have been opened by the mercy of the eternal perfect associates of Navadham. Therefore, those who are enthusiastic realize the touchstone of the holy Dham of Navadvip through their transcendental eyes. Thereafter, they reside in the holy Dham of Navadvip, which they know to be non-different than Vrindavan, and serve in their eternally perfected spiritual bodies. The devotee's main reason for coming to Mayapur, however, was to associate with Srila Prabhupada. He was always traveling, and his disciples could only expect to see him briefly from time to time, and he passed through their area. To see him in Mayapur and Vrindavan, where they could be with him daily on walks and in the temple, was the most ecstatic part of the festival. Prabhupada's happiness to be in Mayapur was increased many times by the large gathering of his international family. He wanted this. Mayapur was for the devotees. Prabhupada even thought that if possible, all the devotees should stay here permanent and simply go on chanting, although he admitted that it was not practical in terms of world preaching. He derived great satisfaction from sitting in his room above the temple half and hearing the constant rousing kirtans. Bhaktivinoda Thakur has said, he remarked, there is nothing of value in all the 14 worlds except the chanting of the holy names. At Prabhupada's request, his governing body commission member had gathered in Mayapur. Their purpose was to discuss ISKCON's preaching activities around the world and then to pass resolutions to direct that preaching. This was the first time they had met as a body in Prabhupada's presence, and he instructed them how to conduct their meetings. They should not simply talk, he said. Rather, someone should present a proposal which should then be discussed and voted on. All resolutions should be listed in the minutes. Chalk out your plans for the year, Prabhupada said, and then whatever you decide, do not change it, but carry it out. Then next year you can meet and discuss again. He was not in favor of prolonged meetings, but he was satisfied to see his GBC secretary seriously confronting all items on the agenda for the sake of a growing Krishna consciousness movement. One of the main features of Mayapur festival was the arrival of advanced copies of recently published volume of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The volume contained chapters 7 through 11 of Adi Leela and included color illustrations by Prabhupada's disciples. Chapter 9 especially glorified the Sankirtan movement begun by Lord Chaitanya and verse after verse ecstatically confirmed the authenticity of Srila Prabhupada's movement. Krishnadas Kaviraj describes Navadvip Dham as the place where Lord Chaitanya had planted the seed of Krishna consciousness tree. In one verse he states, thus the branches of the Chaitanya tree formed a cluster of society with great branches covering all the universe. And Srila Prabhupada had written a conclusive one-line purport to this verse. Our International Society for Krishna Consciousness is one of the branches of Chaitanya's tree. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We'll discuss the remaining part next week. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for joining. Are there any points anyone want to share? How did you feel it? What did you find interesting?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji. It was. Are you able to hear me, Prabhuji?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. Yes, Prabhuji. It was very nice to hear that. How much effort, that austerity that devotees were putting for bringing up this Vrindavan temple, and we are also excited what will happen next, and how the temple will be come into existence at Vrindavan.
Yeah, right. Yeah, nice point, Gaurav.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, also this, a decision of having Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, images of the god, or I don't know what to say, in the altar was very nice, because generally they say, it was mentioned that only Radharani and Krishna's picture is there, but Prabhupada kind of related, they were playing in the sands 5,000 years back. So, it kind of shows the detail of how much it's not just about establishing temple for the sake of doing it, but with all the proper tatparyams. So that was very beautifully put, in spite of all the other headaches he had.
Yeah. Yeah. yeah, it's very unique, right? Krishna Balaram deities.
Yes, Prabhuji.
And,
Because sorry, Prabhuji, yeah, because he had so many issues with constructing the temple, people not giving the right money, people not executing things properly, but still, so much of attention for detail, and not just that let's construct something, nothing like that. And yes, Prabhuji.
yeah. And also Balaram is the first expansion of the Lord. Yeah, this is also one reason. The other reason is also that for preaching, yeah, Prabhupada was looking from a preaching perspective of an organization which is to be empowered by the spiritual master. So that is another aspect, because we cannot understand so easily Radha Tattva, and we cannot understand Krishna, Radha Krishna and all. It's possible only by the mercy of the spiritual master. That is one thing. And another thing is that Balaram is none other than Krishna, where Krishna is the enjoyer and Balaram is the one who is providing the facilities for Lord's pleasure. So in that way, if we say a temple is what is a place where the Lord resides, so Dham is none other than Balaram. So in that way also, yeah. So there is Prabhupada emphasizing the importance of Balaram, our importance of worshipping Balaram. And when I was reading this, I remembered about Krishna Balaram Shīlas of His Holiness Jayadvaita Maharaj. They are so nice. Maharaj worships them.
Yes, Prabhuji. Always, Adi Shesha comes before the Lord, like Lakshman and Nityananda Prabhu. So, yes.
Yeah, and also Prabhupada disciple. Yeah, we see here Jayadvaita Maharaj also following in the same lines. Yeah, when he's worshipping also Krishna Balaram, shows how much adherent he is following his spiritual master, and how we should so carefully understand what our spiritual master expects. And there is also a part where we read, right? There is Prabhupada always wanted things to happen fast. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji, it was slow.
So that also is very important. That is, I think, maybe the key aspect of ISKCON growing so rapidly. And even if we, yeah, of course, we are absorbed in our own day-to-day life, where we have the weekdays, attending so many household affairs. But in those times, Prabhupada had all full-time devotees. And until we get to that stage, I think we can still accept the spirit of always giving our best to speed up things, whether it is preaching, whether it is doing services. So I thought of that. That's one aspect where we prioritize such a way that we are also desperately looking for serving as much as possible within the 24/7 across 365 days. Yeah.
Yes, Prabhuji. Very nice point, Prabhuji.
Hmm.
Also, I think Ramanujacharya also is said to be the Adi Shesha avatar. So, very nice.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share what you found interesting?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Yeah, I found Prabhuji how Prabhupada handle all these problems. Yeah, dealing with this front portion of the and
which means if that front portion of 50 feet, right? 50 feet is not small. 50 feet is almost like where now Prabhupada Samadhi Mandir is there, no? Until that.
Yes.
So remaining what is left is normal temple. So Prabhupada secured his home. Rightfully.
Yes.
Rightfully. Yeah. So he's a Brahman. He's a first-class Brahman. So whatever is given to him, how can someone take it? And he's not an ordinary Brahmin to just out of compassion or out of weakness or out of lack of influence. Now Prabhupada is empowered, so he made sure that one cannot take so easily a Brahmin. What is given to a Brahmin should should be given. Yeah, it cannot be. We can't find reasons or we cannot cheat. That will only backfire us.
Yes, Prabhuji. And Prabhuji, I heard this the deities of Krishna or Balaram, they were or maybe one of them were found beneath the temple. Is it also?
No, I didn't
No?
hear that.
Okay.
I didn't hear. Actually, someone asked how the deity should be, and Prabhupada showed that Balaram is supporting Krishna. So the one who made the deities made in this form, and even in here, this chapter we read, right? Krishna should be black and Balaram should be white. So I mean, I didn't come across that Balaram was found. I don't know.
Okay.
Any other points? Yeah, there's so many points here. We could just recap every line, yeah, which is wonderful. Ram Raga Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Okay.
Yeah.
Srimati Ram Raga.
Yeah, he's not around. Yeah. But yeah, it's the same. One of the incident was when Srila Prabhupada the devotees disciples are waiting for him when he's going for the walk and all. The same thing happened with Jayadvaita Maharaj when he was there here. He all had a chance to go for the walk, and it's similar. This
Blessing, yeah.
Yeah, similar thing, but it's a
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
At least in that case, Jayadvaita Maharaj made best of his time with Prabhupada.
Yes.
We are just trying our best what we can. So I think the easiest thing is to, when we are with Jayadvaita Maharaj, with his clarity of answers, then we also are inspired and become also, okay, yeah, we should think like that. Otherwise, so at least
Yeah.
hankering to be with spiritual master is very important sign. Of course, how much fortune we may have is still not enough. So that's why we should always, either we go there or when they come there, they come here. So it was so nice, right? That Simhachalam trip, yeah, somehow got shifted such a way we could engage ourselves in serving our Param Guru. So nice.
Yeah. Nicely arranged.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we are hitting the clock. Thank you very much for joining. We'll meet us tomorrow. Where are we with? What is Srimad Bhagavatam? Forgot totally.